Hey friends, happy Monday morning. It is going to be a beautiful, beautiful day, but it is definitely a brisk one. It is 22, feel like temperature out there. But I wanted to share something that was on my heart this morning, something that I hope blesses you as much as it did me. A couple weeks ago, I signed up for another ultra, and this is going to take place in Texas. And when I signed up, we were having those unusual fall days. The weather was absolutely perfect running weather, like 50s in the morning, and all that sort of thing. And as I'm getting closer and closer to the day of the race, it's obviously getting tougher to train. On Saturday, we had 17 to 18 mile wind gusts, and it was 14, I think, on the wind chill, and it was just rainy, and it was just coming at me, and just really hard to stay. It's hard enough to stay warm, but when you add in the layer of cold, or I'm sorry, of wetness, it just puts a whole new wrench in it. By the grace of God, though, I was able to run 12 miles of hills and just to kind of power through it. But the deal is that, as it's just such a metaphor for life. It's such a metaphor for running the race, because it's so easy to follow the Lord when times are good, when we have those fall-like days, and or we're standing on the podium, our jobs are going good, our kids are doing what they're supposed to, all that sort of thing. But what about when it's not? What do we do when it becomes a little bit harder or more challenging to run the race? Because let me tell you, as athletes for Christ, we are always in training. We are supposed to be training 24/7, 365. We are not going after the goal of the prize as a participation trophy. We are going after it in the same way that an Olympic athlete goes after it. I couldn't help but think about, I was actually in Hebrews 12 this morning, but we have first in 1 Corinthians 9:24, when Paul kind of explains that to us, the way that we're supposed to run our race. He says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. Paul was saying, don't be one of those runners who just kind of slog through it, wanting just a participation trophy, just to get into heaven by the skin of your teeth. He's saying, run it with all endurance. Run the race knowing that you're running it for God. You're not doing this race in vain. And here we have in Hebrews 12:1, and this is the great part about it. This is the way that we can do it. In Hebrews 11, we see that it's a hall of faith. We look to those people who have gone before us, these saints that have gone before us, and by faith they have overcome. Not only have they overcome, but they all did these amazing things by faith in God, and now they serve as witnesses for us. And the Greek root of that witness is martyrs, so we can look to them for inspiration. And a lot of people in this world, when I talk about ultra running to people, one of the names that I inevitably will hear is, oh yeah, I look at David Goggins and I watch his videos, and this is where a lot of people draw inspiration from, and rightly so, because he's a tough guy, and he does what it takes to get to the finish line. But in our spiritual race, we need to be looking at the heroes of the faith, but most importantly, we need to be looking at the hero of the faith, and that is Jesus Christ. But this is what the writer of Hebrews was reminding us. He says therefore, starting in chapter 12, verses 1-3, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, now those are the saints that have gone before, he said, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Now, let me remind you, he says to lay aside these weights. The sin that so easily ensnares us, we can look to those things that are black and white. We can look at pornography, addiction, all these different things, because we know that they will ensnare us. They will wrap us up and render us unable to even take a step. But we rarely think about these weights that kind of drag us down. Maybe it's our sleep habits. Maybe it's the people that we spend time around. Maybe it's the shows that we're watching. Whatever it is, it's like a weight keeping us down. It's hard enough to run a marathon, but I think about this weight like if I were to try to run it with two 10-pound sacks of potatoes. I might be able to finish it, but it wouldn't be pretty, and it would be very, very hard. And it would be really hard to keep the joy with this extra weight. And we're called to run the race with joy. That's why we're called to have endurance. That's why we train hard each and every day, so that when it gets hard, we can keep the joy, because we've been here. We're looking at the end of the race. We know what is in store for us, and we can keep the joy no matter what, through the wind and the rain and the storms. Because my incentive on Saturday is like I always do after a long run. I get a nice hot cup of coffee, and I was looking forward to that, besides the fact that I knew that this was just another training run that would get me closer to finishing the race at the end of the month. And the reason that I do it, of course, is to bring God glory, is to turn around and just to give him the glory. But this is what we do. In verse 2, it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. At the end of the day, this is who we look to. This is the reward that we pine for, that we long for, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. We know that that Jesus suffered more than anybody. And this is why we look to him as our example, because through it all, he remained faithful and he went to the cross. He endured the cross for us while we were still sinners. Christ died for us. And that's why we are called in this race of life. Verse 3, for consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. Let us look to Jesus as the example to follow, who ran the race. He endured all the opposition, no matter what came against it. And he finished for us. So guys, I really, really hope that blesses you. I am going to get in a workout and get off to the best job ever. It is going to be a great day.